Hello and welcome. Today, I decided to take a break from talking about Davi Vanity. Mostly just because he is super gross. And it's super hard to do that research kind of in any sort of consistent basis. So I'm going to start splitting those videos up a little bit. Do something in between them. With that being said, I also want to play around with some editing, and can't really do that with a more serious video. So, without further ado, we'll get into this one. I'm going to start this video off by going over a little bit of the history of the PMRC, or the Parents Music Resource Center. I found it was a super interesting topic. It was founded by four mothers concerned about some of the lyrics they had heard with their children. Those lyrics being from a Prince song. Yes, a Prince song. So the lyrics were from Darling Nikki, and they were: I knew a girl named Nikki. Guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby, masturbating with a magazine. Hell yeah. I love it. No, that's a great lyric. Anyways, this caused them to try and get the music industry to put a warning label on music with explicit lyrics. And they also created the Filthy 15, which we'll talk about in a sec. And I put mothers in quotations like that, not because these women didn't have children or weren't moms, but because they were all prominent politicians' wives. And they were even known as the Washington Wives. So, to me, that just makes it feel like more of an agenda pushing, moral compass pushing, like almost abuse of power, than it does a "what about the children" moment. I mean, that might just be me, but anyways, so the woman who started its names were Susan Baker, Pam Hauer, Sally Nevis, and Tipper Gore. They created the Filthy 15 and started campaigning for music labels to put warning labels on albums with explicit lyrics that were... They even made this whole rating system, which was absolutely ridiculous. But even the Filthy 15, it felt like they had picked a bunch of random songs from artists they didn't like, because you look at some of the songs on the list, and I'll put it up. It feels like they just picked a bunch of songs they didn't like, that they heard they didn't like, because if you really look into it, at the time of the Filthy 15 being made, there were way worse lyrics. Like, there were way worse lyrics out there. I don't know, they just felt kind of weird and cherry picked. And now, after a bit of campaigning and trying to convince the record companies to put the warning labels on with their rating system, which was part of the big thing, was it was their rating system was completely whack. Whack. Jesus. Anyways, so, I mean, obviously they got a lot of pushback from labels and artists, like some of the more prominent names, like Frank Zappa and Dee Snider from of Twisted Sister, who is actually the only that was on the Filthy 15 that was at the Senate hearing, which we'll get into now. So eventually, the PMRC managed, after growing a bit and a bunch of campaigning and stuff, they finally, got it up to a Senate hearing to kind of figure something out to do about what they were calling porn rock, which is basically just, it was the 80s hair metal. I mean, that was kind of a big sexual, like, sex was just a big part of the music. And I'm getting off on a tangent. That's a different topic for a different. But so they got the Senate hearing, and the three artists that spoke on behalf of artists were again Frank Zappa, Dee Snider, and John Denver. They all spoke out, and I mean, personally, I think Dee Snider had the best testimony, and he had the best testimony in my opinion because he spoke about how if they're looking for gross lyrics, they're going to find gross lyrics, and like they talked about their song, about Twisted Sister's song "Under the Knife," and all the PMRC's biggest tactic was just reciting lyrics. No context, no nothing. Just, oh, look at these gross lyrics, even though music is very subjective. So they take one thing out of it when it was written in another way, right? And Snyder pointed that out. But he also, I feel, hurt them the most because he called out Tipper Gore by name. Al Gore is her husband and was a member of the Senate on that the musicians were speaking to. So, that didn't help their cause. But it's funny to know that before Al Gore was chasing Man Bear Pig, he was trying to help his wife censor music. And since, we have the little stickers now, the little warning stickers on albums, the musicians lost. I mean, it's not the biggest deal in the world now, especially after rap and hip hop in the 90s kind of just co-opted that sticker as their, that was their thing. That was their, hey, this album's dope if it has this sticker, right? I mean, that's kind of how it made it. It really just made it cooler. And there was artists that preached that during, before the hearing. There were a lot of artists that said that. It was the Streisand effect before the Streisand effect. Because really, I feel like that attributed to the explosion of rock and metal in the 80s. But that kind of wraps up this point, so we'll move on to the next part of the video. So in this part of the video, I'm just going to briefly kind of skim over a little bit of what I've noticed on or happening to YouTube over the last few years since I've started actually watching and having an interest in actually creating content. So first off, I'll skim over the adpocalypse says, 'cause there were a few. And while they all somewhat initially were meant to tackle big issues, I feel like it showed a crack. And soon as the crack opened, traditional media decided that they wanted to hurt it as much as they can. And that was really that was the best way to do it. YouTube seemed, it was the Wild West, right? Like, it seemed just kind of uncontrollable at a point. Like, people just thought it was, funny cat videos, people falling down, music, that kind of stuff. Like, and people, I mean, for the most part, that's honestly what I think people still think it is. But I feel like once they saw the opening, and I feel like Google saw the opening too and thought, hey, maybe this is an opportunity to finally make YouTube profitable. So they stopped putting an emphasis on small creators or even helping or caring about small creators. And they push creators that, like the Pauls and J Station, that really, they actually do shitty things on the platform. But they allow it because they're profitable, and that slowly but surely pushes small creators off the platform. So in order to bring my point all together, I first need to tell a short story. So the other day, I was watching a documentary on the PMRC. It was actually here on YouTube. I'll put it in the description because it was super interesting. And I finished it and I saw that Smiling Pariah, or Rob Gavigan's second channel that he's doing all his, why would you put that on the internet, and all his funny stuff. By the way, if you're not subscribed to that, I definitely recommend it. But I saw that he had uploaded a video ranting about an episode of 60 Minutes. Yes, the Boomer show that they put on while they nap. Anyways, he was ranting upon it because they were interviewing Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of the platform we're on. And you could tell that the woman interviewing Susan knew absolutely nothing about YouTube and did not want to know anything about YouTube. You could tell that the entire episode was just there to make YouTube look bad. But it also kind of reminded me of some of the clips from the documentary I had just watched. Because in the documentary they had some clips of the Senate hearing. And there were some very staunch similarities that I found. The similarities come down to fear and not understanding where or what these things are. And I mean, it makes sense, but I mean, you see it in the 80s, they didn't like the tone of the overall angry tone of the music, so they found ways, like with Twisted Sister's Under the Knife, to make it about masochism and BDSM when he wrote the song about his fear of surgery. I mean, it just goes to show that kind of thing is subjective. And then with the YouTube side of it, they're comfy in their big empires, and they see people like losers like me that can just put out a video on the internet and have the potential to maybe get millions of views when they spend millions of dollars to maybe get thousands of watchers. And you could see with every question the Senate asked the musicians in the 80s, or every question that 60 Minutes asked YouTube, they don't want the real answer. They want the answer that makes them feel better. And like, the one thing that really, really annoyed me with the Senate hearing one was the one guy in the Senate or whatever, he straight up said that he would make that kind of music illegal if he could. And then said that hopefully this hearing will force the music industry to clean up its act, which, I mean, it obviously didn't, but and I got a very similar feeling watching that 60 Minutes episode. The entire thing was taking rudimentary stats or just stats that aren't actually relevant and making them sound scary. And it kind of makes me feel like these kind of people just stop caring about any sort of progress once they get comfy. Thank you for watching. This was a nice little break from the scum that is Davi Vanity, but I will have more on him because there's a lot more to cover. But I also have a few other little ideas for in between, so should be fun. But you can follow me on Twitter at ahump101. I keep forgetting to say that for some reason. Anyways, if you like the video, leave a like. If you dislike, leave a dislike. Subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you next time.